Good evening, and welcome to Having a Drink with Mink. Although you can't see me, I assure you I'm your host, Jason Mink. Thanks for tuning in. Hope everyone out there is well and staying warm. We've been getting walloped by winter here. Not the, ooh, snow is so magical kind as much as these shoes were supposed to be waterproof and I can't feel my little toes, and where the hell is the bus kind? But we endure. Still no set, but bear with us. I'm sure you'll be looking at my whiskered mitt again before you know it. So hey, enjoy this while it lasts. I hope you have a nice beverage on hand. I know that I do. We've got a lot to get to, so hang on. A lot was happening in 1972. The world had discovered the joy of sex, cheered the Winter Olympics held in Sapporo, Japan, and went to the moon for the final time. In America, President Nixon won a second term in spite of the brewing Watergate scandal, and the long-running game show The Price is Right made its debut. Cinemas saw the release of soon-to-be classics like The Godfather, Deliverance, and The Poseidon Adventure, but there was a darker side to the screen as well. Exploitation cinema was at its height in 1972, with films like Pink Flamingos and Last House on the Left working their way into theaters and drive-ins. The blaxploitation film ran parallel with this movement, small independent productions targeted at a more urban audience. And while street-level dramas like Shaft and Superfly are perhaps the genre's best-known examples, horror films proved ideal fodder for reimagination. And where better to start than the classics? Dracula was a riff on the Bram Stoker novel, complete with cape and coffin. However, instead of being another cheap knockoff of an idea that audiences were long familiar with, Dracula distinguished itself with snappy writing, a dynamic soundtrack by Gene Page, and an engaging cast headed up by classically trained theater actor William Marshall as the doomed Prince Mamuwalde. On stage, Marshall had won critical acclaim for his portrayal of Othello, leading to roles in popular television shows like Bonanza, Star Trek, and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. His powerful but nuanced performance in Dracula hit a nerve with audiences. The film was a hit upon release, garnering a sequel and quickly becoming a cult favorite. And like any cult favorite worth its salt, it has to have an action figure. I mean, you had to know that was coming, right? Produced by our friends at Amok Time Toys, the Dracula Deluxe action figure was released in 2013. Limited to just 500 pieces, this 12-inch offering came in a sturdy, eye-catching box. The front panel features movie poster-style presentation, while on the back is an image of the figure itself. His bite was out of sight. Out of the box, and the figure comes with a smart-looking display base emblazoned with his logo. He doesn't need it to stand, but it doesn't hurt. The Prince is built on the standard 12-inch body, which is fine. Marshall was a bigger guy, so it works well. The figure sports a movie-accurate costume with gray lines, silk-style cape. The cape's ties are a bit on the large side, but it's a minor nit. The three-piece suit is well tailored and fits the body naturally, allowing movement without unsightly bunching or folds. The high point here is undoubtedly the remarkably detailed head sculpt. It captures both the actor's likeness and the film's distinctive facial hair pattern. Solid paintwork underscores the detail, although some blending between hair and skin would have added to the lifelike quality of the sculpt. If you can find one and have the $400 that this guy commands on the aftermarket, then Dracula makes a worthy addition to your action figure shelf. However, if you're a collector on a budget like me, then you can't help but hope that Mego or someone else comes through with their own version of the Prince in a more affordable, mass-market format. Speaking of vampires, here's an item that I've coveted ever since laying my bloodshot eyes upon it decades ago. It's genuine soil from Dracula's castle. And why not? After all, if pet rocks and shark teeth could become hot fads, why not dirt? Offered in the back pages of Warren magazines like Famous Monsters of Filmland and Vampirella, this nifty little transparent coffin pendant contained 1 gram of native Transylvanian soil. Allegedly. For all I know, it came out of James Warren's backyard, but would a certificate of authenticity lie? I'd have to be some kind of cynic to think otherwise. Say what you will about authenticity, but 10 out of 10 for presentation. In spite of its ludicrous nature, there's a sobering legitimacy to this entire offering, like I'm buying it from the Franklin Mint. I mean, it's dirt in a gumball machine prize. Did this need to be vetted or something? Alright, if this is having a drink with Mink, then surely there are some old comics to talk about. Yes, there are, and don't call me Shirley. Tonight we have some doozies, let me tell you. And the best part of my day, sharing these books with you, as I know you appreciate them in the same way that I do. Let's dive right into Aquaman 18 and the wedding of Aquaman and Mera. 18 issues in seems a little fast for a Silver Age hero, but hey, can you blame the guy? I mean, think about Superman. At the time, he was dating this chick. And this is what Batman was pulling in. Now consider. I mean, no contest, right? But first, Arthur has to run a gauntlet of, well, let's just say, less desirable choices. You see, Atlantis is an old-fashioned kind of town, and Artie here is flamboyant enough, what with the gold chainmail shirt and fins and all. If he's gonna be king, he needs a queen. Aquaman is so put out he breaks the fourth wall. It's one thing when Deadpool does it, but here? I mean, does he know I've been watching him the whole time? It's unsettling. Anyway, the future king and queen of Atlantis have their meet cute on the high seas with the obligatory giant monsters for local color. Aquaman takes his latest catch home, and let's just say Nick Cardy has a type. Great googly moogly. This issue ends with a lovely scene of the underwater wedding with other DC heroes in attendance. And as none of them are wearing oxygen tanks, I'm not sure what they're breathing down there. Better make it a quick ceremony. Any day you can land an 80-page giant for under a Finsky is a good day. And if it's Batman, well, kid, you're sitting pretty. There's 6 stories here, but Ride, Bat Hombre, Ride is the one that I was most looking forward to. Batman thwarts an assassination attempt on Mexican President Caraban, but the incident makes it clear that the Dark Knight services are needed in places other than Gotham. He offers to train up a new deputy Batman, going as far as scouting a location for a secret hideout and getting him a horse cool enough to actually wear a mask. I know, it seems unlikely, but it might be more common than you think. At any rate, Bats hires a new guy based on how long he can hang sideways on a bar. You think that there might be some sort of psych evaluation or something like that, but the hell with it. Give him a utility belt and off we go. Of course he's going to use it for crime. In fact, he may have even murdered Batman by the end of the story. You wouldn't think that he'd scream like that, but I guess dignity goes out the window when you're about to become a real-life Wile E. Coyote. And dig this ad for Chamber of Chills model kits from Aurora. You may have built these yourself back in the day, or you may remember them from the 1979 film Salem's Lot, where James at 15 had them in his bedroom. In fact, he used part of the Dracula model to drive one of the film's vampires away. Now that's making the most of your hobby dollar. More DC in the form of Jack Kirby's Commandi 11, one of those books that just keeps on giving. And welcome to Sackers, the mall with everything, including the devil. Commandi finds out the hard way he's more of an online shopping kind of guy, especially when he encounters this nasty critter. That thing is sure to get stuck in his hair. Let's jump forward a decade and change and dip into this issue of World's Finest. While this isn't a book I collect, I was obviously intrigued when I stumbled across it. And while the inside lacks the surreal quality of the front cover, the art is still quite striking, with the Superman pages especially notable for their experimental composition and use of iconic imagery. And the colors are nice too. As we all know, Hulk is the strongest one there is, but there's always some chump who has to learn the hard way. This month's chump is the Abomination, and how many times does he gotta eat pavement before he sees the light? Seriously, my man, pick your battles. How about Daredevil or Kazar? Sure, if you fight them, they're still gonna win, but it's gonna hurt a hell of a lot less than doing this dance again. I admire your tenacity, and like they say, sometimes God loves a trier, but the Hulk? He eats punks like you for breakfast, and he doesn't even bother with the prize at the bottom of the box. Aim lower. The more I look at this issue, the more I feel like I have it packed back up at the archive, but what the heck. Seeing it again gave me a nice feeling, so here it is. Avengers 46 sees the return of Ant-Man. And how? Only not really. Sure, Hank started shrinking again when the situation called for it, but he remained Goliath up until his breakdown in Avengers 59, when he took on the Yellow Jacket guys. At any rate, old foe Whirlwind shows up to wreak his vengeance, shrinking Hank and Jan down without their powers. Stuck in an anthill, things are looking mighty dire, but luckily one of the bugs mistakes Jan for Mary Tyler Moore and lets the duo live. I mean, I'm not the only one seeing it, right? It's a short run, but an issue that I know that I was missing is Not Brand Ec #1. And while the book may have once been criticized for being a mad knockoff, I think today that very well may be the title's strength. After all, the original Mad comic pioneered superhero satire, so if you're going to emulate anything, it might as well be by the masters. And the fact that Silver Age creators like Jack Kirby, John Severin, and Ross Andrew were creating these parodies only added to their potency. Seeing the King get silly with Marvel's First Family mitigates those depressing stories about office infighting and betrayal, at least to a small degree. It's clear that fun was had, although who had the most and whether they deserved it, I'll leave it up to another guy to decide. All I know is I snatch these X up when I find them, just happy to add a little more fun to the collection. Marvel periodically returned to parody-based humor, first with the 1990s What The series, and then in the 2000s with Strange Tales. I'm only going with my gut here, but this feels inspired by DC's Elseworlds 80-page giant. You remember the one where the sitter... Well, you remember the one. Those kooky Elseworld-style stories are in evidence here, created by some of the then cutting-edge underground comics artists like Peter Bagge and Tony Millionaire, whose Iron Man story feels a bit like a fever dream. There's also a very blaxploitation-y Brother Voodoo story chock full of Marvel in-jokes and a retelling of the Fantastic Four origin, only with revised text and dialogue. It's fairly mean-spirited and uninspired, with some edgy humor that doesn't quite find the mark. I'm not saying it's bad, it just doesn't make me laugh is all. Next stop, Riverdale, and one of those hard-to-get monster covers. These demand a premium because of their horror associations, but patience led to this affordable beater-reader, and ownership trumps condition, am I right? Following on, and ice to meet you. Sorry. Under this eye-catching Betty and Veronica cover, we get a comparative rarity in the form of a Pepper one-pager. Pepper was a supporting player over in Josie until the Pussycats era, when she and her boyfriend Socrates mysteriously vanished, run out of town, or rubbed out by the Riverdale Mafia. As much as I enjoy Warner Brothers cartoons, I can't say I bother much with the comics. In spite of the best intentions of the creators involved, something is simply lost between the screen and the page. That said, I got a kick out of this one, mostly because Daffy says, woo woo. It's one thing to hear him say it in the cartoon, but to read it on the printed page is a heretofore undiscovered delight. And here's Elmer gassing himself with pesticide, always good for a laugh. Unlike other comics of this era, Silver Age Gold Key cartoon books are still cheap and plentiful, at least up this way, so snatch up a few if you can, and enjoy. I found this gag at the very back, both amusing and surprisingly racy for a family publisher. Issue 1 of Dragstrip Hot Rodders reprints older Charlton stories, but I bought it for the cover alone. You may scoff, but I've read the insides, and this is definitely the best bit. Your mileage may vary. Next up, it's U.S. Fighting Men number 17, and this is the all-action issue. I guess the previous 16 issues were a bunch of touchy-feely bullcrap, but don't worry, we've got it all locked in now. Mock air combat is just that, a tale of some bored American pilots indulging in war games over enemy territory. Only the enemy has gotten wind of it and decides they want in on the fun too. What follows is a load of flying lead and bloodshed, leaving one to wonder what the point of it all is, anyway. But don't get too sentimental. It's time for Operation Brainwash, and it looks like the eyes have it. Way to fill the panel, man. Heading into the home stretch, and it's tense suspense from the short-lived Fago magazines. You've tried their cola, now try their comics. And while similar to popular name brands, Fago is a little flat and on the watered down side. That said, this strip printed on the inner front cover feels like something that Dan Klaus drew about 2 hours ago. So it's not that it isn't somehow palatable, it's just slightly off is all. And while Tense Suspense is a great title for a comic, this could have just as easily been called Ugly Guys Monthly. I mean, here's him, and as if to make a point, 2 of him. On the plus side, I think we found Walter White. Boris Karloff. I don't want to say that he was just cashing the checks, but this comic of his, it all feels pretty hands-off. Not that it's boring, mind you. You have diner skeletons, this terrifying porcine manifestation, and the living dead the cover made mention of. I thought that might have just been hype, but no, here they are in all their wrinkled prune glory. You are definitely going to want to moisturize after that. Talking about affordable old comics, and I've found these DC horror books often turn up in dollar bins. Don't let their ubiquity turn you off, as they often feature some creepy stories and stunning art from lesser-known creators. In Fire Dance, a woodsman burns a colony of pesky moths, only to encounter a beautiful but mute woman. Quickly becoming his obsession, the woodsman seeks her out, but the gal is not what she appears to be. It's a little bit of poetic justice, courtesy of DC Comics, Robert Kanigher, and Abo Campo. We finish off tonight's episode with Space Mysteries number 9 from 1958 and IW Comics. This issue reprints Strange Worlds 19 from Avon, which was printed in 1956. The inner cover shows off the latest wares from our friends the Johnson Company. We've got bullwhips, knives, and gorilla masks, plus an abundance of guns. What the hell were we being prepared for? Perhaps the menace of Cerebex, as portrayed by artist Bill Benoulis. I've never heard of Benoulis before, but he's both technically solid and compositionally literate, delivering some dang impressive work here. I mean, this panel is heartbreaking and shows, had things gone differently, he may have become a creator of note. Sandwiched between stories is this ad for Karate Self-Defense. Let's push this little guy around. Ha! Bet they learned their lesson. Strangers on Satellite C is another men in jumpsuits potboiler, presumably being menaced by all the vegetables they slipped to the dog at the dinner table as kids. I know I'm still haunted by the memory. Hazy floret and cob shape shifting and bobbing in the gassy miasma of dream. Thankfully, our story concludes with the evil side dish blown to atoms, the astronauts presumably going back to the safety of their space capsules to suck food out of tubes, as our creator intended. On that note, I leave you. Thanks for joining in the fun. We always appreciate you stopping by. If you want to support what we do here, pick up a t-shirt from the swag shop. Link in the comment section below. I'm Jason Mink, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.